I'll just mention I saw you by the door. We have Mr. Antoine Alcorn. He's an LPC. He's going to come and give us some information about his programmatic piece for us, the church. We need to have this. Certainly we need to have this. And this is something that we've provided for the church to have. Most parents need to have this. They're dealing with children. You have relationships, issues, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Antoine Alcorn to come in his own way and present his program to us this afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Antoine Alcorn. I am a licensed professional counselor, mental health therapist. I'm the owner of Thrive Counseling and Consulting Services. We're located right across the street here in Stonewall Square. We provide outpatient behavioral mental health services. We do individual counseling, group counseling, family counseling, relationship counseling. We also provide premarital counseling. As a mental health therapist, I treat anything from anxiety, depression to more serious mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar, grief and loss counseling. I'm also an addictions counselor, so I provide substance abuse counseling for those that may be struggling with addictions. We also provide counseling for trauma and PTSD. I start out at 8 years old. I go from 8 years old all the way up. There are other providers in my office. Mr. Curtis, he starts at, I believe it's at 6 years old, all the way up. We do have, we also provide medication management for those patients that may need some medication to help stabilize their mood. We have a nurse practitioner on staff. We have Mr. Curtis, a licensed professional counselor. Ms. Tina is a social work therapist. Ms. Elizabeth is a licensed professional counselor. Ms. Carey is also a licensed professional counselor. We are in the process of starting to do genetic testing. So we will be testing. Sometimes physicians will put individuals on medication, and a lot of times they are experimenting until they find out what medication is most effective. But we're getting ready to start offering our services where we can draw your blood, do the lab work, and we can actually tell which medication would be most effective with you based on your genetics. We provide in-person and also telehealth counseling as well. So thank you for the opportunity, Brother Carter, to speak with you all today. I won't hold you long. I enjoyed the message today. I was sitting back there and it just took me back to growing up at Weldon Church of Christ, where my cousin was the minister there. So it reminded me a lot of him as you were standing there with the message on today. And if you're like me, after service, after worship service, I'm ready to eat, so I won't hold y'all long, okay? All right. So I love what I do as a mental health therapist, and I think these conversations, we need to have these conversations in church and outside of the church, particularly in our communities. This is something we do not talk about, we don't want to talk about, but we need it. We need to talk about this. So I'm going to talk just briefly, and then I will open it up for questions. If any of you have questions, I think that would be the most effective. I don't want to bore you with a lot of statistics and things, but so one of the things that since COVID has happened, there's been an increase with anxiety and depression. When COVID happened, our phones started ringing. We were getting calls with a lot of children. Parents were calling about their children. We found out that when COVID happened, we couldn't go to school, couldn't go to work. We were isolated. So a lot of young people start to deal with anxiety and depression because of the social isolation. And so we got a lot of calls. We also got a lot of calls from married couples that were seeking marriage counseling. I mean, our phone was ringing off the hook for marriage counseling, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. Well, then it just dawned on us. We were talking in a staff meeting that during COVID, everybody was at home. And so we realized maybe the couples realized they really didn't like each other as much as they thought they did. And so we just got a lot of calls for marriage counseling. Uh, but I want to talk to you today just a little bit about anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression, serious medical illnesses that affects millions of people. It affects how we feel, how we think, and what we're doing. The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that there's about 21 million adults reported that they were experiencing anxiety and depression back in 2021. And so those numbers have continued to rise. Episodes of major depression is more common among females as it is compared to males. All right. And so how do we identify depression? So it's an overwhelming sadness, loss of interest in pleasure or activities once enjoyed, sometimes changes in appetite, weight loss, or weight gain unrelated to dieting, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. And so one of the things that I look for with males, particularly Black males, so we think when we talk about depression, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear depression? Sadness, right? So sadness. But one of the things that I've been doing a lot of research since I've been a therapist and working with Black males. That's one of my focus areas. And I'm actually I'm working toward my doctorate degree, and my research project is dealing with Black males and depression. But one of the things that I discovered as Black males, we get up, we go to work every day. We're still attending social events. We're still talking. We're still outgoing, but we are actually dealing with depression. So what I look for in Black males is a couple of those symptoms: easily angered, easily frustrated, and easily irritated. Because what we do is we, as Black men, society has conditioned us to suppress our feelings and our emotions. We hold everything in. We don't talk. We hold it in because society has conditioned us that we have to be strong at all times. We can't let anybody see us weak. What happens in this house stays in this house. We've been told all these things. Don't let them see you sweat. And so we just grew up thinking that we had to be strong all the time, but we just suppress everything. We don't communicate. We don't talk. So we grow up, we get in relationships. We don't know how to regulate our emotions. We don't know how to manage our emotions. We don't know how to communicate with our spouses. We don't know how to be emotionally present for our families. And so this is one of the things. But what I do thank God for over the last 3 years at our facility, we have seen an increase in Black males that are engaging in counseling. But that's just an area that I'm really interested in and I'm focusing on. Right. So again, changing in mood and attitude. Many times we react to behaviors without exploring the possible causes. We look at our young people, we look at our children, and we say, they're so bad, or they're this and they're that, but we really don't know what's going on the inside of them. A lot of times when individuals come and they're referred to me for anger management, and they'll come in and say, I got anger issues, and I always tell them, no, you don't. Anger is a normal emotion. We all experience it at some time. Anybody in the room, if you never get angry, please tell me what your secret is. All right. It's a normal emotion. See, God created us with the capacity to think. He created us with the capacity to feel, and he created us with the capacity to act. And so I always tell young people, anger is not your issue. And I tell adults that also. Normally, we are experiencing something else before it goes to anger. Anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion, it's a secondary emotion. We're normally feeling something else that influences the anger. And so what I try to do is explore what's really going on with the individual so I can properly diagnose and help them to address what's going on. It's easy for us to get angry and react to that. It's more difficult for me to really understand my emotions and then begin to regulate and manage. And so that's one of the things that we look at. When we're depressed, we often distance ourselves from someone. Sometimes we're in the house with each other and we're not talking. I'm in this room, my relative spouse in the other room. We're not talking, we're not communicating, we isolate ourselves. And so we have to start looking at these things. The faithful start to have irregular attendance to service. That's one of the things we got to look at. So how are we able to identify when someone in our congregations is dealing with depression? Sometimes they begin to isolate themselves. They're not showing up for service anymore. They're not showing up for Bible study. Depression will cause all of us to isolate ourselves. Then we start to have irrational thoughts. We start to have thinking distortions, right? Things are remembered differently than they happened. Right? You ever been talking to someone and you wonder, where are you getting that from? Where is that coming from? Right? Then you have sometimes individuals will start stepping back from their church duties, feelings of inadequacy. Someone is better at this than I am. And so there's a lot of things that go into this, right? Some of the statistics that we looked at with the research, depression affects pastors and leaders also. 70% of pastors say they have a lower self-esteem now than when they first entered ministry. Right. 70% of pastors say they constantly fight depression. 50% feel so discouraged that they would leave their ministry if they could, but can't find another job. 80% believe that their pastoral ministry has negatively affected their families. 65% feel their family is in a glass house being watched and judged at all times. 70% do not have someone that they consider a close friend. 44% of pastors do not take a regular day off. 1 in 3 Black adults with a mental illness never obtain treatment. I treat a lot of ministry leaders at my practice, pastors, lay leaders. I treat a lot we provide Christian counseling. And so just some of the things that I've heard that these leaders are saying is because, we feel like we have no one to talk to, right? We have to be strong for everybody else. But inside, we're struggling with our own issues. And so we need to address and talk about these issues. But what we have to remember in the church, pastors and leaders, I want y'all to know that you're not God and you cannot be everything to everybody. We love to help. We love to engage in ministry, but we have to know where the boundaries are. We have to know when we cannot do it. Right. We have to know where to, when to pull back, when to take a break. It is okay to say no, not right now. And then self-care is a must. How many of us engage in self-care? How many of you exercise? How many of you are paying attention to your diet? How many of you go out and do things, or you're engaging in self-care? Right. It's very important. Because you know what we do? We get so caught up in going to work, taking care of our families, trying to provide and all that we neglect ourselves. We neglect our emotional well-being. So we have to pace ourselves. It does not have to be done all in one day. Right. So what are some of the barriers to mental health treatment? There's a lot of stigma surrounding mental health. So when we say mental health, what's the first word that come to your mind when I say mental health? Right. that C word. So I always tell them in the office, in the clinic, we don't use the C word in our clinic. Okay. But that's one of the stigmas that surrounding mental health. And the first thing that someone will say is, I'm not going to talk to a therapist because I'm not crazy. Well, it doesn't mean that you're crazy. Sometimes life can be so overwhelming that we need someone to help us to process things. Someone that's going to talk to us in an unbiased, non-judgmental way to help us to kind of sort through the things that we're dealing with. Then when we look at access to treatment, some people will say, I can't go, I don't have a ride. They talk about the high cost of professional treatment, right? And so we have to look at the access to treatment. If you have insurance on your job, insurance will pay for mental health services. Your employer, if you need mental health counseling, go to your employer. Most employers have an employee assistance program, and they will pay for so many sessions for you for counseling. A lot of people aren't aware of that, but most employers have an employee assistance program. They will pay for individual counseling. They'll pay for marriage counseling. They will pay for your children to get counseling also. And then when we talk about access, so at my practice, every provider in my office, I make sure that every provider has so many number of pro bono slots available throughout the year. And so what pro bono is that we provide free counseling services to those that may not have insurance or have any other means to pay. And so all providers have so many slots, and we offer so many sessions per year. And then we also provide free counseling to homeless individuals. So that's just our way of giving back to the community. It's our way of giving back to the community and just thanking God for how He's blessed our practice. And so we look for ways to give back to the community. Right. A lot of people won't go because they feel ashamed. I should be able to snap out of this, or I don't want anyone to know that I'm dealing with this. And it's a silent killer. And so we have to talk about these things. And one of the things that bothers me, a few years ago, I knew this young lady, and I would see her in the community. We had close ties through some family members, but I would see in the community, and I noticed a change in her affect in her behavior. And I would ask her, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she would always tell me, "Yeah, I'm okay." But I knew that something was off. She was changed. Her behaviors changed. Well, about 4 o'clock one morning, my phone rings, and wake up and answer the phone. It was this young lady on the other end of the phone, and she says to me, she says, "I can't do this anymore." And I asked, "What are you talking about? You can't do this anymore." She said, "I can't do this anymore." She tells me on the phone she was getting ready to end her life. I'm talking to her. I wake my wife up, and I'm writing my wife notes so that the young lady wouldn't know that I was sending help to. I was having my wife to call 911. She gave me her address, told me where she lived. And so I had 911 to go there to do a welfare check. I did not want this lady to end her life with me on the telephone. Right? I didn't want her to end her life, period. Paramedics get there. They knock on the door, and I said, "Hey, I called them. Please let them in. Please let us help you." Finally convinced her. She let them in. They took her. She spent 2 days in the hospital. They gave her some medication to kind of stabilize her mood for a little bit. She's doing fine now. Not taking any medication, but she was dealing with some things within her marriage, and she just felt like she couldn't go on anymore. But I said all that to say what really hurt me is that this young lady is a believer. She's faithful to church. She's there every Sunday for Bible study on Wednesday nights, and no one in the church knew what she was dealing with. And that is painful for me, right? What has happened that we've gotten to the place that we can't talk to each other, that we can't open up and confide in each other? It concerns me that we will suffer in silence instead of reaching out for help. So we got to get away from this. I don't want anyone in my business. There are some people that you can trust. You have to pray and ask God to lead you to the person that's going to take care of your emotional well-being. They're going to handle your information. They're not going to expose it and use it against you. It takes a mature, spiritually mature individual to do that. Right. So when we talk about depression, we can go to the word of God. Elijah, after he had performed this miracle, the miracle, right? Jezebel said to Elijah, listen, tomorrow about this time, I'm going to do to you what you've done to my followers. Elijah got the news, and what did he do? He isolated himself. He took off. He separated himself from others. And that's what we'll do when we get depressed. And that's in 1 Kings 19:3. It says, and when he saw that, he arose and he went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. Then he, after he separated himself, the Bible says that he had a desire to die. Then it goes on to say he believed that he was the only one that was having that experience. And sometimes we feel like I'm the only one that's dealing with this. I'm the only one that's going through this. Nobody understands or nobody will know. And because he separated himself, he had a desire to die. And then he believed he was the only one having the experience. As a result, see, we have thoughts, we have emotions, and we have actions. So as a result, it was difficult for Elijah. It was difficult for him to see how the Lord was still blessing him. And that's what depression will do to us. We'll get so lost into our thoughts and our feelings, and it's hard for us to see what is going right in our life. We discount our blessings because we get so lost into what we're dealing with and what we're going through. And so we can find instances in the Bible where individuals were dealing with emotional issues. But I want you to know that, listen, whatever you're dealing with today, you're not alone, because God promised us that he would never leave us nor forsake us. So what are some strategies? What can we do to help fight some of these issues? And I'm almost done. So what are some strategies? So as a licensed professional counselor, when I'm working with people and I'm working with my patients, I thank God for my education. I thank God for how he's blessed me. But I also have enough sense to know that I can't do this in my own will, in my own intellect. So every day that we go into the office, me and the other providers, we get together before any patients come in, we get together and we pray. And we ask God to give us wisdom to deal with our patients, those that are sitting in front of us. So my first thing to you is this. The first thing that we all need to do is pray. And we need to tell God, we need to tell the Lord our thoughts and our feelings. Why? Because he understands. Over in Hebrews, for we have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. And so we have to pray. Then we have to meditate on the word of God. We have to memorize and speak the word of God. We have to exercise regularly. We have to eat healthy foods. A few years ago, I went to the doctor. He said, Mr. Antoine, I'm going to have to put you on some diabetes medication. And he started telling me all this. And I said, no, sir. He said, well, what are you going to do? I had to change my diet. And I love a fried pork chop and some fried chicken and all that, fried okra, them ding dongs and Twinkies and honey buns. Right. I had to change my diet. If I wanted to get healthier, if I wanted my mental health to improve, I had to change my diet. Another thing is that we have to get a reasonable amount of sleep each night. Right. Have to get a reasonable amount of sleep. So make sure you're going to sleep on time. Make sure you're resting. Another thing is you can't lay down with your cell phone and on all these devices and think you're going to immediately go to sleep. Because what happens is with the lighting and everything that's in that cell phone, it actually stimulates the brain waves. And so when you're having trouble falling asleep, your brain waves, the body needs to start relax before you actually go into sleep. So I always encourage people, set your device to the side. A lot of people will go to sleep with that device. So make sure you're getting a reasonable amount of sleep. The next strategy is you got to find purpose. Everybody in this room, we all have purpose. Young people, you have a purpose. We were all born with a purpose. God has a purpose. So we have to find our purpose and start to put our focus on our purpose. And we have to focus on someone or something other than ourselves. When we're working and helping others, and when we're ministering to others, it actually improves our mental health. It improves our emotional well-being. How many of you feel good when you've done a good deed for somebody? Right. So there are benefits into helping others and doing things for others. Next thing you can do is create a list of small goals to achieve. Check them off as you accomplish them. Journal your thoughts each night before you go to bed to kind of clear your mind. You can listen to music, listen to soothing music, do a creative activity as a way to express your emotion or as a distraction. Don't isolate yourself. Be around people, even if it means just going to the store. I was working with a young lady one time that had not been out of her bedroom for 9 months. Her mom called me and was telling me what was going on. And so sometimes I'm unconventional in the way that I do therapy. I took therapy to the house. I agreed to go to the house and we started working with this young lady and slowly start doing the exposure therapy where we just getting her to stand by the bedroom door. Then we would get her to step out right outside of her bedroom door. It took us some time to finally get her to the place where she was able to leave the house. She had had a traumatic experience that caused her to shut herself off, right? And so be careful that you don't start to isolate yourself, because when you isolate yourself, you can go into a deeper depression. Then we have to learn how to be present in the moment. I tell people this all the time. We got to be present in the moment. Most of us are not present in the moment. What do I mean by that? So right now, some of you are thinking about some chicken and thinking about what you want to eat, right? That's okay, because I am too. My wife should have the catfish ready when I get to the house, right? But we have to stay present in the moment. See what anxiety does or depression does. Anxiety will keep us in the future. We're always worried about what if this happened? What if that happened? I got to do this. I got to get that done. So we're always in the future. Or when the past, I should have done this. If I would have done that. And so our mind is, we're either ahead or we're behind. And it's hard for us to be present in the moment. We have to stay present in the moment. Sometimes my wife will check in with me just to make sure I'm present in the moment, because she'll be talking to me, Brother Carter, and she'll say, Antoine, do you hear what I just said? And then she'll test me and say, what did I just say? So we have to be present in the moment. So we have to recognize and appreciate our surroundings and the people in our lives. So we have to be present in the moment. I treat a lot of younger children with ADHD. And this is one of the things that I do is teach them how to stay present in the moment, because they're easily distracted. They can't focus. And so I do a lot of work with them and teaching them how to use their 5 senses to stay grounded and to stay present in the moment. Right. So and then next strategy, meditate to relax and refocus your thoughts. A lot of times the mind is constantly going. We get lost in our thoughts. And a lot of people are just going through life surviving, going every day, surviving to make it to the next day. And their mind is constantly racing or constantly in a turmoil. There are some people that get up in the morning, they'll get home in the evening, and I can ask them, what did you do today? And they can't tell me, because they're so consumed and they're overwhelmed by just daily life that they can't stay present in the moment. Several years ago, I was treating a physician who came to me. She was dealing with some depression. And as I started working with her, and I was thinking, you're accomplished. You're known all over the world for the research and the work that you've done. But she was depressed. And as I started working with her, do you know she could not tell me details of significant events in her life? She remembered the day that she graduated from medical school, but she could not give me any details of the graduation ceremony. She remembered when she got her bachelor's degree, but she could not give me any details. She wasn't present in the moment. She was always from one thing to the next. And a lot of us go through life that way. And then we have to use thought stopping techniques. Listen, we have to slow ourselves down and be present in the moment. Right? And so what I'm saying to you, when we talk about mental health, the first thing that we think about is the C word, but mental health encompasses a whole lot more than that. It's what we think, it's how we feel, and what we're doing as a result of what we're thinking and what we're feeling. I believe that we go through life reacting to what we think and what we feel. That's just how I believe that there's something that influences our actions and our decisions. And so I do a lot of processing with that. I do a lot of cognitive reframing with that. That's very brief about depression and what I do and the services that we provide. So briefly, I'll open it up for any questions that any of you may have about the services that we offer, about any questions that you may have. Yeah, right across the street here, 607 North First Street, in Suite 1. We've been there going on 4 years now. It'll be 4 years, June 1st.
I've got a question back here in the back. How many sessions does a person normally have to go through with depression? No.
So it depends on the severity of their symptoms. There are some people that I have been treating for a year, 2 years. There are some people that they can go through 8 sessions and they'll be okay. So it depends on the severity of the symptoms. Those people that I've been treating for over a year or so, they are actually in a better place. A lot of them would like to continue just for preventive measures.
Can you tell me about your services that you give over the phone with, say, a child that you may talk with?
So I
Because-
do video counseling.
Okay.
So it's through telehealth. Now with children, they have to come into the office for the intake. And
Okay.
then we will assess if they are appropriate for the telehealth. Not all children are appropriate for it. When we talk about attention span and focusing, there are some adults that's not appropriate for telehealth when it comes to that.
I would like to, if you can you elaborate when it comes to the medication? Because there's some, I'm gonna speak from when I realized that I had a mental illness and depression and things. And my trial one of the biggest trials I had was with medications. Can you elaborate for those that take medication and those who are gonna have to take medication, that it's a trial and error?
Yes, ma'am. So in our office, the nurse practitioner that prescribes medication and the therapist, I will tell you that at Thrive, our first goal is not medication. Even the nurse practitioner, that's not what she pushes for first, unless a patient really needs the medication, right? But when we talk about when patients are prescribed medications, sometimes they are looking to find what's the most effective for whatever you've been diagnosed with. But again, we have the capabilities now to do the genetic testing, where it's easier for them to determine which medication will be most effective for you. And so if I would encourage anyone, if you're on medication, there are services now where they can do the genetic test and they'll do your blood work and they can help determine which medication is most effective for
I have a question.
you. Yes, ma'am.
For the children that have ADHD, sometimes the medication give them tick. Is there help for the families to understand not to be embarrassed by that, or do you have some
Yes,
type
ma'am.
of?
So what I encourage all parents, if you have children, and so in our office, we do a lot of education with medication. I would encourage you to talk to the prescriber about your concerns, about side effects and all that. Make sure you're asking questions, make sure you're talking and getting information when it comes to the side effects with medication. So I am not licensed to prescribe. I do the psychotherapy, so I have to be careful
Right.
of the conversations I have with that. But I would encourage you to talk to the prescriber about the side effects and all that. There are some side effects with that. I know there are a lot of parents that the children that we treat, they're concerned about that. And so some of them don't want medication. But the therapists, we work really hard to use these behavioral interventions with young people to teach them how to manage the ADHD, because the medication will stabilize them, but they still need to know how to manage it on their own. And so our goal is, with all of our patients on medication, is if they can eventually come off the medication, then our nurse practitioner, she's going to work to eventually get them off of it. And so we work closely together. When she prescribes medication, we're doing the therapy with the patient, but every week we have staffing. And so we're talking about the progress and what we're doing, right? And then she'll start to titrate them down. She'll do that for a while, but she's checking in with us to changes in behaviors and those things to help eventually get them off of it. Now, there are some people, reality is there are some people that will need medication longer, or maybe lifelong. That's just the reality of it. A lot of people are, when we talk about medication, But if it can stabilize a person's mood, then we will recommend that they do take the medication.
Thank you.
But with children, I will tell you, there are a lot of interventions you can do. So I always ask parents, what's your child's routine? Sometimes I find out that parents, they don't teach their children how to be still. They just let them run over the house all day long. They're constantly moving, constantly going. So when it's time for them to be still, Ms. LG, they don't know how to be still. So I talk about what's the structure like, what's the routine, right? Start teaching them how to. I actually do that in therapy. I had a young man came, and when he first came, he actually saw one of the other providers. The very first session, the other provider came and said, Mr. Antoine, I'm sorry. I said, what? He said, he wouldn't be still. And so I decided, I said, hey, I'll take him on. My very first session with the young man, he was on my table, he was under the table, he was over the chair. But you know what I done? I got in the floor with him. If he laid in the floor, I laid in the floor with him and talked to him. If he got on the table, I didn't lay on the table with him, but I was there. But eventually, he started learning how to sit still. Now, I didn't start off saying, you're going to sit still for 10 minutes. Hey, we're going to sit still for a minute. And he'll come in now and he'll sit in that chair the entire session. We didn't get there overnight. So sometimes there are things that we can do. And you had your hand up.
Just like the young man that you're speaking of. He's 6 years old. He swings from the chandeliers. If he could swing from the wall, he would. He's doing kind of good sitting.
Right.
But we're working on trying to find him somewhere where he can fit. And I know he's trying, boy. Yeah, a chatterbox.
Yes, ma'am.
And
You,
running motor. Running like a motor. This one, he's on, he has, well, his routine is in the morning before school, take your Vyvanse. When he doesn't have it, his teacher notices this.
Right.
I've seen him while he's under his medication. And you had mentioned, say, speak to the provider, because yeah, I have he bites his lip, and to me, it looks like a fiend.
right. Yes, ma'am. So yeah, talk to the prescriber about your concerns with any type of symptom side effects. But again, with ADHD, the constant movement, it's overstimulation. Their nervous system is always stimulated. That's why they feel like they always have to be moving. You have to, if they're in therapy, you have to make sure whoever they're in therapy is a right fit. So if they're in therapy, I'm not saying anything about them. But what we try to do is we really try to build rapport with our patients.
He's not quite there yet. He has a social worker
Right.
therapist,
And you have to,
and they fit.
okay, yeah, make sure it's a good fit.
This one,
Yeah.
I need that's gonna fit.
Yeah.
That'll get down on the floor.
Yeah, it takes
Lean on the table.
Right. It takes a lot of
Fall
time.
halfway up the wall with you.
Yes, ma'am. But you have to, again, there's the nervous system is always stimulated. There are actually techniques and things that you can be working on at home with them too. If you'll take one of my cards, I can email you some information.
That was one of the things that I worked with her and her children. But I feel that, and I tell her over and over, it starts at home, the structure. And if you ain't got the time and the patience to put the structure in with your child, so they used to you allow them to do any and everything at home. And when they come in the public, they embarrass you. Because of, you think they supposed to do what you do. Sit down and be still. No, you hadn't taught them that. So these are the structure that I have been dealing with her. She thinking that they can get it on their own. They cannot. And that's why we have to separate while they're at church right now. They're everywhere. I have to put them right here beside me, this and that. But it starts at home. I have to be the one. There go the father back there. He just left out. I have to be the power wheel instead of him being the power wheel. And she might come forward with power, but it's not enough power because they're not going to hear her. And then, but when anything that I say, and when they're at my home, I say 75% they're at my home, they listen to me because they know JJ don't play. And that's because they know what I stand for.
Right.
They have to do that at home. So that's the thing I've been telling you. The
Right.
question that you asked in him, these are the things that you have to do.
Yeah, so there has to be structure, but then when we talk about with the inattentiveness and all of that, what we do is we use a lot of techniques to help young people to understand what's going on within their bodies, how they're feeling. And then we teach them self-regulation techniques. They have to start learning how to, as we all do, have to self-regulate that. And so we really work on with trying to help them to understand what's going on within them, where they feel it at and all of that. There's a lot of techniques and things that we use because sometimes they just know that they got all this energy. They don't know what to do with it. And so we work with them on that.
Okay, my grandchild wanted me to ask this question. It was mostly concerned about her. For years, she's dealt with epilepsy and other health issues. So with the medication that she was on, I can't think of the name of it, but she took it for some years. So finally, she's being weaned off of her medicine because when they get the test, her brain pattern seemed to be working. But it also left the thing with her, she has hallucinations, really bad. And it only happens when she's alone by herself. She could be in a car, I'm driving, she can just sit back and start thinking. And hallucination is about death. And it started, I believe, when I lost my son in 2014. And death is something that we can't talk to her about. But yes, she breaks out in tears, don't want to hear it. And the situation is, because of her hallucination, she gets upset. She's 15 now. I won't let her spend a night with anybody because I just don't think people would understand what she's going through, and it would scare them because it still scares me. And
Yes, ma'am. So there are techniques and things that we can do in therapy to help with that. So I brought some information about our practice and what we do. Any other questions before we close it out?
Yes, I have a question about, with ADHD, the attention span for those that have that, but for the, regular, I say regular, I shouldn't use that word either, I guess, but what's the normal attention span for children and adults?
So for adults, anywhere between, most of us can stay focused anywhere from between 30 to 40, 45 minutes. After that, our mind is everywhere. For children, it's a lot less time. But again, there are a lot of techniques and things that we use in therapy because the way that our brains are wired, that our nervous system is wired, what happens over time is that we essentially like train our bodies and train our minds, and when we start to talk about habits and things. So I do a lot of the cognitive reframing, a lot of that work. And the research shows that when we start to engage in that consistently over time, the brain begins to rewire itself. And it can adjust, right? So even when people talk about they have these certain habits and addictions and things, right? We do a lot of those types of techniques to help the brain will start to rewire itself, right? Some people feel like I do this and I can't help it, or this just the way I am. No, what you've been doing over time has trained your brain is now hardwired for that. So there are things we do in therapy that when you engage in reframing, you know, if I have people say, well, that's just who they are. I always say, well, that don't make it right. So we can do things and learn things. We can learn different ways of doing things. And if we engage in those different ways, again, the brain will rewire itself. So you think about, for those, we go to work and we take the same route every day. Most of us will raise our hands and say that sometimes I leave work and I get home and I can't even remember. I just realize I'm at home. I don't remember passing this or that, right? You've been doing that same route every day, twice a day for so long, your brain is you automatically know the route. Right? It's the same thing with habits and those types of things.
My
Yes.
question is, you were talking about the brain waves, and I do know, like, even with me, I have these brain waves, the sounds that heals the body.
Mhm.
And it is relaxing, and it does open up that part of the brain where it's dead, and then opening back up for, it can heal your body.
Right. Yes, ma'am. So there is
Yeah.
a lot of techniques. So I read a lot. I do a lot of research. And to me, it's amazing how God has created us. The brain, the mind, the ability to think, the capacity to feel. That's intriguing to me. And so as I study and I research and then doing therapy, a lot of these techniques will work. So I just want to encourage you, any type of emotional distress, make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Right. Make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Make sure you're getting in tune with yourself. You're taking care of your emotional well-being. Otherwise, we will run ourselves ragged. We will run ourselves ragged. I am seeing an increase of young people, in their 20s and 30s that are having strokes and things because they're just overwhelmed by life. And they're just not taking care of themselves and not finding that balance to deal with life, just overwhelmed, stressed out. And stress will eventually, you're going to start having physical symptoms related to the stress. High blood pressure, headaches, difficulty sleeping. All of these emotional things eventually is going to start having an impact on your physical health. Yeah. And I was sharing with someone, I do some work with cancer patients with depression and things. And so I was I was at a conference just last week, and one of the things that come up was about healing, healing of the body and things. And they asked me, does stress and all of that play a part in or delays healing, right? And there is some research that says that it does. So if we're stressed out, it's going to impact our physical health. So you don't have to be ashamed. You're not the only one, right? And in my closing, I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm a mental health therapist, but I go to a therapist once a month myself. I've been doing it for years, right? And I do it just to have someone to check in with, right? To make sure that I'm okay. I can't take care of my patients. I can't take care of my wife if I'm not okay. And so I'm telling you, as a therapist, I go once a month faithfully to see a therapist. So nothing's wrong with it. God bless you all. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Alcorn. We certainly thank you for sitting with us and listening. And hopefully we'll benefit from it. We get contact information and we'll go. We want to thank Sister Hines for bringing him to us. We want to certainly thank her for that. And thank all of you for staying. Hopefully we'll be able to do something. Now we're getting ready to have our baptism. She didn't want all in, so will this crowd be all right? Will this crowd be, okay, all right. Come on, JJ, we gotta get all this out the way. Gotta get her prepped.
Hey, Zoom, we're gonna turn this one off, so it'll just be about counseling, and then we'll turn it back on for the baptism here in about a little bit.